To what extent is the cult of Mussolini central to understanding 20th century Italy?
Well, first of all, we need to ask how central is the cult to understanding the fascist regime. It was a very important factor in fascism. Mussolini was a man of the people. He had a common touch, and the regime portrayed him as being above the day-to-day, above problems. So under the regime itself, people learned to blame fascist officials if things went wrong. And I think that perception, which was constructed as part of the cult of personality, can help explain why, after the war, the image of Mussolini wasn't destroyed. Mussolini was the first modern Italian politician. He created a template which could carry over even into democratic politics. Now, it didn't do immediately, because in the post-war years there was a very strong concern for political leaders not to emerge too strongly. But I think as a subterranean feature of Italian political culture, it remained there. And I think even in the post-war years, one can point to the leaders of a number of minor parties who still had that sort of strongman image. So I think there are a number of levels, they're just two of them, in which we can say the cult of Mussolini shaped the political culture of Italy over most of the 20th century.
Secondly, Professor Gundle, you mentioned that there has never been a satirical representation of Mussolini in film. What does that reveal about politics in Italy?
Well, one might say at one level that it doesn't reveal very much, because of course politics did not revolve around the image of Mussolini in the post-war period. But certainly the fascist regime and its dictator were an awkward and embarrassing presence. If we think that Mussolini's body was only returned to his hometown for burial in 1957, that gives us a sense of the awkwardness that must have lasted over the 12 years that followed the war. And I think, in a way, the fact that it was still an open question, the simple fact of the burial of the dictator, discouraged the sort of satire which had actually flourished during the final years of the regime. Also, there's the fact that satire is usually directed against the powerful. Those who've lost power are often viewed differently, with a certain indulgence, and in a Catholic country, maybe with a certain forgiveness.
Lastly, Professor Gundle, how can Italians bridge the gap in their collective memory and formulate a new national identity?
The project of creating and declaring an Italian empire was absolutely crucial to fascism's self-identity. Fascism wanted above all to turn Italy into a great power. What that meant was that Mussolini's greatest period of popularity ran from the declaration of the empire in 1936 to the onset of the Second World War in 1940. Because of the setbacks in the war, the empire was lost very quickly. It had been a brief experience, but one that shaped the perceptions and the mentalities of a generation. And I think if we look at the phenomenon of the indulgent memory or nostalgia for Mussolini that flourishes in the post-war years, quite a lot of that has to do with this sense of lost empire. And the atrocities, the horrors of empire were completely erased in this depiction. And if we take a film like Line of the Desert, a great Libyan film about fascism's role in Libya and the resistance to it, it's never had a release in Italy. I would suggest that if Italians are going to move beyond this, they first of all need to face the facts, and the true history of empire needs to be part of perhaps the school curriculum or a process of public education.